Hi, my name is Africa Miranda, and I am, let's see,
I know.
a lot of slashes, but I'm an actress, TV personality, beautypreneur, and lover of travel, and just living life in your best way. So, the first time that I think in life that I can remember someone talking to me or making me feel like I wasn't good enough was actually the first time I lived in New York. And I moved to New York after college because I was in a girl group that was being put together. They had a girl from New York, a girl from LA, and I was the girl from Alabama. Now, I mean, was it a learning curve coming from Montgomery, Alabama to New York? Absolutely. I was very conservative, like homecoming queen in college. So I definitely was in some ways out of my element, but I still was talented. But I remember that I was working with a production team and they were a duo. And one of the producers, I won't say their names, but one of the producers, thought I was great and was really supportive, but the other one just from the get-go was never really crazy about me. And I remembered I was, in the situation, and it was the first time in my life I really felt challenged. Like I was used to being the best at things or, the shining star. So it was very strange for me to be in a situation where out of 3 people, I was being looked at by someone like I was the weakest link. So I was always working and trying, working on my choreography and the songs and just all of these things. And I remember one day the producer was giving me a ride, I think to the gym or somewhere. And he just looked at me and he said, "You know what, Africa? Some people just don't have it." And I just was like, in that moment, I just kind of shut down. Like he dropped me off wherever I was going, and I got out the car, and I just remember I was devastated. And from that point on, I think I was probably, the group ended up disbanding. Like they ended up replacing me with somebody else, but then the group never came. It was just one of those things where it was by the grace of God, I got out of it because it was a crazy situation. That was the first time in my life I felt really small, and there was a part of me that believed it because I was already feeling insecure and nervous about the situation. And it took me years to shake off what he said to me. Because even there are even moments now, before I go on stage, you revert back to that. Am I good enough? Can I do it? Can I do any of these things? Because even if there's 1,000 people that tell you yes, you're going to always sometimes remember that one person that was yeah, you're just all right. So that was the first time. And am I thankful for it? Now years later, I can say yes because I did, I definitely worked hard, but it's not something that I would wish on anybody because it was horrible. Growing up, I was always creative. I started playing the violin when I was 4. I went from there, I taught myself piano and then took piano lessons. I went to an arts program in junior high school. Was always very active in the arts, but I tell people growing up in the South is just different. You don't have the luxury. Being Cape Verdean was kind of an afterthought. It wasn't because also to my mom's family, my father's Cape Verdean, my mother isn't. Okay. So I was the only Miranda, in a family of, and when you're down South too, I tell people too, you're either black, you're white, you might be mixed. There's no, there were only some Mexicans once we got to high school. You just don't have the luxury of being anything else because it's the South. It's very much what the labels are. So for me, it was very much, that's what I identified with. And not that being Cape Verde isn't being black, but it definitely is a different culture than the traditional African American experience. So it's just, growing up down South was interesting. I mean, I was in a setting where I always wanted to do something much more creative. And even though I did those things in school, I think it was still very much understood that, but you're going to go to college, you're going to probably go to grad school or do something after that. So for me, once I graduated from college, I did not go to grad school. I was just I don't know. I had spent all this time doing what I thought people wanted me to do. I was telling everybody, oh, I'm going to go to law school. I don't want to go to law school. I don't want to be a lawyer. But I said it because people were oh, you're smart. You should do it. You'd be great. And when it came time to really do it, I was just I'm not taking the LSAT. I don't want to do that. So I worked in the governor's office for a couple of years after graduation. And then I got the chance to be in that girl group, and I got the heck out of Alabama and never looked back. My mother, I'm my mother's only child, and she was very protective, that part of my family was very conservative. And I remember when I finally left to go to New York, it was like a funeral at the airport. And one of my best friends came and she gave me a hug and she whispered in my ear, she was just go. She was never come back. I was But I mean, my family, they've been supportive, but I think when you're in this lifestyle that's not traditional, it's very hard for your family sometimes to understand what you do or what you are doing. Because, especially in entertainment, the markers of success are TV, magazine, they're very specific markers that, people that are outside of this life look at to say, well, that's if you've made it or not. So for years when those things were happening, it's like, well, what are you doing? So thankfully, about 7 years down the road, there was finally like a commercial on TV or some magazine ads started happening. So then it's like, oh, all these years of work have now started, to turn into things. So I mean, I'm thankful that my family is supported. My next move was my cousin's house in Brooklyn, like my cousin's couch in Brooklyn, because they had the girls and I in this townhouse in Jersey. It was very making the band before, it was like right before that became a thing. I was like, I don't know if we were probably the inspiration for that. I don't know, because a lot of people kind of came through that house when we were living there. But, when it was over, I didn't want to go back to Alabama, but I was just in New York. So I had a cousin, thankfully, that lived in Brooklyn. I slept on her couch for a couple months. And then I started working with the producer. I lived at his house for a minute. And then I found, I was able to get my own place and was temping. And you just kind of go into that life of, you're in New York, like you just make it happen. And you start making friends and making connections. And thankfully at the time I was working with producers that were really well known. So I'd gotten to meet a lot of people. And they just were really helpful in continuing the journey of my career. So I started doing a lot of live performances and I was temping. It was just, I was doing everything that you do in New York to survive and not be homeless. So I feel like if you name it, like I had a job once that they had us passing out magnets in Times Square.
Oh my God.
That was the moment where I was like, I went to college. I'm handing people like magnets for American Express. It paid well, but it did not feel good. It did not feel good. Modeling is the surprise of life. So I fell into modeling, like I said, when I left New York the first time, I moved to Atlanta to help a friend open a beauty boutique. I was not doing anything creative. We literally opened the store. I was managing it, selling Indian hair. People were like, what do you do? I sell hair. Like, that's all I do. And a girl came in the store one day and I was ringing her up and she was like, oh, do you model? And I was like, no. And she's like, oh, you should go to my agency, you'd be great. And I was like, I'm not tall because, I think modeling, I think Naomi Campbell, Tyra Banks, I think tall. She's like, no, there's all kind of like lifestyle work. And I never honestly had really paid attention to the difference in lifestyle or print work versus like traditional fashion modeling. And lo and behold, I walked, when she told me about the agency that she was with, I went and they had an open call. Like within 6 months, I had booked my first like major campaign. Less than a year later, my first billboard, magazine ads, and like it became like I was working all of the time. I've done ads for Coca-Cola, for like some eyeglass companies, for like just all kinds of things. And then from there, it turned into commercials, and they were filming TV stuff happened, and then the Bravo show happened. But it all was really from modeling. One thing you understand, especially going into like the acting side, like music was harder for me to hear those no's because when you're doing music, it's very much a rejection of you. Like, I don't like your voice, I don't like your look. I think, it's just, it's a very specific rejection of you because that's it. But for modeling and acting, sometimes it can just be, oh, well, she's a little too tall for the, or the person we're going to pair her with, maybe they don't work. Like, for me, I never took the acting or modeling rejections very personally because you are kind of anonymous in those things. So I just, like for that, you get told no a lot. I mean, you can go to a million auditions and some you get, some you don't. Yeah. But with that, those never really bothered me. It was more like practice. Okay. It's like, okay, let me get in here because the more you audition, I think the better that muscle, gets exercised and the better you feel. But I would tell anybody, whatever is the thing that you hold most dear is going to be the hardest for you to hear no. And for me, music always has been that. The modeling, I don't want to say that I didn't take it seriously, but in the beginning I didn't. Now, I mean, it's definitely a craft. It's something I've worked on because when you book these big campaigns, like client doesn't have all day for you to figure out your angles. You have to come in and like, hi, I'm ready, I'm here. Like you got to get the pictures and get in and get out. So I've definitely grown an appreciation for it because you do have to be professional. But I would just say with a lot of those things, you can't like take all the no's as a rejection of you as a person. It doesn't mean you're not attractive. It just may mean clients have things that they're looking for. Yeah. And when you walk in, sometimes it's like, oh my God, that's it. And then other times they're just like, oh, we like her. But I've had things where I walked in, maybe I didn't book that, but then a client has called me back later for something else. And it's like, we remembered you and we liked you and it wasn't a fit for that, but we thought you'd be a great fit for that too. So you never know sometimes. They say in the acting role, you can book the room and not book the job. And sometimes that's better. So it was just, it's just until I think you get to a place where you, one, start to accept your hair for what it is and you start to really learn it. I looked at it as something I had to fight or to conquer, or that it was honestly that it was bad. Not bad in terms of good hair, bad hair, but just it wasn't like nice. Like I just didn't think there was anything special about it. I begged for a relaxer. I think I got a relaxer in 6th grade, and I had it until I was a full-on in my adult. I think until I was maybe 30. Okay. And it was just one of those things where I started realizing for me, I was wearing sew-ins a lot. And so I was like, it just started being I'm very logical. So it wasn't even so much that I just wanted to be natural. I just said, well, if I'm wearing sew-ins 90% of the time, why do I take my sew-in out, get a touch-up, just to braid it back up like 3 weeks? It's just stopped making sense. So from there, I started, you start the journey at that point, because once you commit to it, then it is like this thing of like, oh, you haven't seen your hair your whole life. Exactly. And I grew up with an aunt that was a hairstylist, and then transitioned from her going, like, I was a black girl with a standing Saturday hair appointment, even if I had a weave. Like, I was like, I'm not doing my hair. So then I was like, wait, this means I gotta do my hair? It's definitely been a journey of self-exploration, and I'm so glad that I did it. With hair, I think as a black woman, and I know for me, it's just there comes a point where you have to stop looking at it as something that you've got to break or conquer. And that was the biggest turning point for me. But even in that journey, I still realized that I had some hang-ups that I didn't know that I had. Because, everybody thinks, like, oh, I'm natural, I love my hair, tea and natural. But then you realize, like, you like natural, like, a certain way. And I realized that I still had very specific ways that I thought natural hair was appropriate and not appropriate. Like, if I was on red carpet, I would do, like, a blown-out, like the Tracee Ellis Ross curls, or clip it, or fall, or just different things that I felt were more glamorous. And then also at that time too, I had been like super anal in taking care of my hair. So my hair had grown out. I had bra strap, it's like you reach start reaching holy grail of natural hair. So I was like, I had bra strap length hair. I was like, oh, well, I did a hair appearance, and a stylist did my hair and ended up burning it, and I got heat damage. And so that happened in fall of 2013. So from 2013 until August of 2016, I had to basically grow and cut off all my hair. So basically I had to retransition all over again. But it made me kind of face a lot of things, because I realized, okay, so my vanity is in my hair. And I was really caught up in like, oh, my hair's long, it's this, it's that. And I've never been caught up in texture, but I was a length, I was a length girl. I was all about length. So that was something that I realized I still needed to face. And then I also started at that point, when my hair was but even the length it is now, like when it's my own hair, I was never really showing it then when I transitioned the first time, because I was wearing weaves or wigs or falls or just different things. So I really made a point these last 2 years to work to accept myself. I said, because I can be telling people, love yourself, love your hair, no matter how it is. When I'm like, but for you. Not for me. So really, like 2015 and 2016 were the first times that I like did red carpet events with my own hair, like not blown out curls, but like a twist, just a regular twist out, like for AB hair. Let's see what we got, and it was really about me conquering a lot of my own fears. And I've noticed that, especially with my following and people that supported me, I got really great feedback and was able to have some really great conversations about acceptance in our hair. Because you think that you don't have these issues, but it's so ingrained in us. Yes. It's so ingrained. So I kind of had a whole second hair journey after the first one, but it's been good. I'm thankful. I was very devastated, and when I look back at old pictures, sometimes it is hard. But I think that the path of self-discovery that I've been on these last 2 years, and the things I've been able to do, I do tie some of it now, looking back to like the damage of my hair and having to really like shed a lot of things and start over in more than one way. So it was in its own way beneficial. If anybody tells you they don't care, if somebody likes it or don't like, they're lying. You care. Because if not, you will be put, you know what I mean? It's like the reason why we post at certain times. It's the reason why, it's just, you do, like, yes, you're doing it for the gram, you're doing it for the likes. And I'm not saying that it drives your life, but any person that has, and this is the thing about what I talk about vanity. I don't always necessarily think that vanity is a horrible thing, because it can really drive you, I think, to achieve. But any person that says, you know what, I think enough of myself to put myself out in front of people and tell them anything they should be doing with their life, there's a certain amount of vanity there, and you're doing it because you want positive reinforcement. Like so I'd be lying. I was like, no, it doesn't matter. Yes, it does. I don't live and die by it, but at the same time, there's now, especially when social media becomes a business for you, somebody has to like it, because then you need to show brands that, you know what, I have influence and people care. So, on a personal level, you do have to work to not totally get caught up in it, but I'd be lying if I was saying that, like, no, you don't post something and think, well, nobody's gonna like it. But it's always funny when you have something that you think everybody's gonna like, and it's like crickets. And then something that you don't think is gonna be the thing, and you're like, they like the, so it's funny. But you do. One thing I learned over the years is, because I do so many different things. I think initially I was just kind of like, let me just cast the widest net possible and just try to do all of these things. Now I'm much more purposeful. It still may be multiple things, but I have more of a plan. And on one hand, first I would tell anybody, don't lose sleep over what people think. They're like, honestly, because half the people are mad that they don't have the guts or, you know, the strength or the confidence to do it, because there are so many people sitting at home judging. And I'm just like, you could be doing all the things that I'm doing too. I've just chosen to make the personal sacrifices and to put myself out there to rise or fall. So that's the first thing. Like, you have to let that go, because everybody's gonna always say something, and I'm just like, that's cute, but you can watch me on TV. But at the same time, you have to have some purpose in what you're doing. And the thing, it's going to take some a windy road a bit, because if you're somebody that's multi-talented, which most people that are creatives are, it's going to take a minute for you to say, okay, what sticks? But that period of searching should not be like a 20-year period. Give yourself, you know, an actionable amount of time. Maybe give yourself a year, 2 years, depending on how old you are. If you're a little, you know, if you're in your early 20s, you've got time. Figure it out. Now, if you're 35 and you got this job and you're like, I've always had these dreams of doing these 5 things, you might want to pick one. You know, that would be my advice for that. But just be purposeful about it. Now it's like, you know, when people see this product and see the elixir, I didn't just decide 2 weeks ago and then like all of a sudden I'm going to throw out a product in November. This was something that started 2 years ago. So throughout those 2 years, I posted more about travel. I started telling more of a beauty story. I started talking more about, you know, these different things that would all work towards that story, so that even though in November I released a product, if you really start thinking about it, about 2 years ago, I started planting seeds for a story that makes sense. So that's how you can do multiple things, but it doesn't just seem like, okay, did that come out of left field? Yeah. You've got to have a long range plan. You have a business and you're the business. So if you're not constantly like investing in yourself, like I just, you know, I had a camera, but I needed to, you know, you're buying equipment, you're buying like, you know, you're making sure that you look a certain way, you're making sure that you're okay, what kind of content can I create to attract certain brands? You're writing pitches to brands, you know, for ideas that you have. Like, it's not as if it was as simple as just posting just a couple of nice pictures on Instagram, then if everybody would do it and everybody would get paid for it. And it's not. Like, it's definitely a thing of, I work. And I think what's the hardest about, you know, when you are someone that creates your own, you know, your own life, on the outside it looks to people like, oh, you're just hanging out, like you're just this. And it's just, no, I've gotten to do some really amazing things, but I've also done a lot of work to make that happen. A lot of work on myself, a lot of work on my platforms. Like, nobody wants to spend, like, being on social media and crafting all this stuff and sharing and it's not fun. Like, being on your phone all the time or not being accessible or missing things because you have an opportunity to do something else because you really need to get paid for it. Like, it's not, it's you know, it's not as fun or as glamorous as it looks, but I enjoy it, and it's also what I've chosen. And it's just interesting though, because a lot of people do look at influencers or those of us that do these things like, oh, you just do it for free stuff. And free stuff is nice, but it's just as much of a job as someone that's a lawyer, that's a teacher, that's a, you know, I don't want to say a doctor because we're not saving lives, child. But you know what I mean? But it's just, it is an actual profession. People that anytime you start making certain amounts of money that you can make in this lifestyle, it's not by accident. People that are successful YouTubers that are, you know, anybody in social media that's starting to make 5 figures, 6 figures, you know, you're doing it like this is a job. I mean, this is absolutely a job. Like, I'm doing full-on photo shoots that might as well be a Vogue shoot for Instagram. But you're creating, you know, that type level content so that you can partner with brands. I'm getting ready to take a trip next month, and I'm putting together pictures for a multimedia travel diary. It's like, yeah, you might just go on vacation and take a couple pictures with your friends. I've got to make sure that I'm writing about it, that I'm videotaping it, that I might be finding a crew over in the Middle East to film me while I do it. But at the same time, it will finance the vacation. So it's, you know, it's there's a lot that goes into it. 90% of what you see is my ideas and my creative direction, and it's my life. And then, you know, there comes a moment where you have to decide how much of your life do you show, and do you need a break? And I've noticed even since the top of this year, I've still posted, but I've just noticed this month, and I don't know if it's because just everything that's been going on, like I've just been in a different space where I was like, I need a little bit of a break. And I'm still posting content, but I'm not like feverishly making sure like, oh, 3 times a day I've got to post here and post there. And I'm just in a space right now where I'm doing what feels good. At the same time, still keeping up, you know, somewhat of a consistent schedule. But I think you have to listen to, you know, listen to your body, listen to your mind, listen to your spirit. And if it's saying like, you know what, we need a bit of a break, I think you need to do that, because whatever you then will share will be better. Versus people can tell when you're just like posting a post and putting stuff up to put it up. And I never wanted to be like that. You know, I realize like with those people, I love trying to give people a good word. And then because I have some friends that I perform with, and I'm always like, you need to do this, you need to do that. But one of the 3, like we have these 3 things, and it started off as a joke, But now when I really think about the three things, like they have really become like life mantras. So the first is use your oil. And that kind of started as like a little joke. So you know when you're, especially in a black church, when somebody's singing, they say, oh, they got the oil. So my whole thing about using your oil is whatever your gift is, like use it. Like don't shrink, like use it. I don't care if somebody says you don't got it, you got it. Like don't let someone tell you don't have the oil. You know, like everybody, and everyone has oil. Everybody's oil is different, but you've got it, and whatever your oil is, use it to the fullest. It will never run out. You can keep pouring, like it's never going to run out, so use it. The second would be to know your audience. Everything is not for everybody. Everybody's, you got to know the places where you are received, know what your stage is, and what's your room to work, because it's not, there are some rooms you're not going to be able to change. Like that producer who told me I don't have it, I could win an Oscar, a Tony, a Grammy, I could win every award known to mankind. But he still would probably look at me and just be like, yeah, but she's still whack though. You can't, and you can't spend your life trying to win everyone over. So just know your audience. There are places where this is where I get the love. This is where it works for me. Live in that space. Get that support so that you can use that to go on. The third was going back to Power Day about don't chase.
Okay.
Like it's okay. You're going to have these setbacks. You're going to have moments where you feel like nothing is coming together and you feel like somebody's sitting right next to you that looks the same and is doing the same things and they're popping. It's okay. You have to do what you do. You have to stay true to your race. You have to stay true to what your plan is. You cannot change it because this person is doing something different and it's working for them. Their oil is different. Their audience is different. Their story is different. So just use your oil, know your audience, and don't chase.